Hi, grade 4. Today we're going to be talking about equivalent decimals. So we're going to go over some vocabulary again. So we have a decimal, which is a number that uses a decimal point and place value to separate the whole from the part. So 4.82. Tenths are a set of 10 equal parts of a whole. So the 8 in 4.82 would be a tenth. And hundredths are sets of 100 equal parts of a whole. So 82 would be 100 out of 100 equal parts of the whole. And equivalent decimals are decimals that represent the same amount. So let's look at these two pictures here. So we have our yellow and our green. Our yellow one is out of 10 and our green is out of 100. So let's make fractions for these and put them into decimals. So for our yellow fraction, we need to have it out of how many? How many equal parts are there in the yellow square? So it's out of 10. And how many are colored yellow? 6. So let's make that into a decimal. So how many whole parts are there? 0, decimal point. And then how many tenths should there be in there? 6. So it would be 6 tenths. Now let's look at our green square here. So how many parts is it out of? It's out of 100 equal parts. And how many out of those 100 equal parts are green? 60. So let's make that into our decimal point. So we have no wholes, so 0 decimal point. And then how many hundredths do we out of? 60, so 60. So it would be 60 hundredths. So let's look at our place value chart. Let's put the yellow decimal into it first, and then we'll put our green one in after. So how many tens are there in our yellow decimal? We don't have any, so we don't have to worry about that one. How many ones are in there? 0, and then so we have a 0 decimal point. And then how many tenths? 6. And we don't have any hundredths, so we don't have to worry about that box. Now let's look at our green decimal. So we have no tenths, we don't have to worry about the tenths column. We have a 0 in our ones column. How many should be in our tenths column? A 6. And how many in the hundredths column? A 0. So now looking at these two decimals, both decimals have a 1 or 0 in the ones column. Both decimals have a 6 in the tenths column. And then only the green one has a 0 in the hundredths column. But because there are no numbers after the 0 does not need to be there to hold the place value. So our 0 is equal to nothing, so it doesn't matter if it's there or not. So that means that these fractions are equal. And if we look at our pictures up top, we can see that they are equivalent. They represent the same amount. And if we look at our fractions, we have 6 over 10 for our yellow fraction and 60 over 100 for our green fraction. And if we divided our green fraction by 10, it would be 6 over 10. So it's the exact same fraction. So we know that is the exact same. They are equivalent decimal points as well. All right, now let's look at this question. Bobby and Joey visited the desert park. Bobby recorded his distance as 1.5 kilometers. Joey recorded his distance as 1.05 kilometers. Did they walk the same distance? So let's start with Bobby. Let's make a picture for what he has said. So we know that that is out of 10 because our 5 is in the tenths column. So we have a whole out of 10. So we have all 10 of the bars filled in orange. And then let's make our next one. So it'd be 5 out of 10 would be filled in orange. So that's Bobby's picture. Now let's make a picture for Joey. So because his 5 is in the hundredths column, it would be out of 100. So we're going to have one full filled in purple because it's a 1 before the decimal point, so it's a whole. And then we're going to have another one that has only 5 filled out of 100. Now looking at these pictures, I think we can know the answer already, but I want to show you some other ways we can also do it. So let's make a fraction out of Bobby's picture, so the orange. So out of how many is it? We know that there's a whole, so we can put a 1 in front of our fraction. We know it's out of how many? It's out of 10. So how many are filled in out of that 10? 5 are, so 1 and 5/10. So let's make that into our decimal point right away. We know that there's one whole, so the 1 would go in front of our decimal point. And then how many tenths? There's 5/10, so 1.5. Now let's look at Joey's picture, the purple picture. So we know that we have one whole, so we have a 1 in front of our fraction, and we can cross out the whole so we don't have to look at it anymore. And out of how many parts are there? So there's 100, so it's out of 100. And how many are filled in out of 100? 5. So 1 and 5/100. So you can make that into our decimal point right away. We should know there's one whole, and there's no tens, so it would be 0 in the tenths spot and a 5 in the hundredths. So let's put them into our place value just so we can really see the difference here. So our orange decimal, there's a 1 in the ones column and there's a 5 in our tenths column. There's nothing in our hundredths column, so we don't have to worry about that. And then with Joey, we have a 1 in the ones column, a 0 in the tenths column because it has to hold the place value, and a 5 in the hundredths column. So looking at this, we're going to look at our tenths here because that's where it changes. We can see that Bobby actually has a higher decimal point. He walked more. So we know that no, Bobby and Joey did not walk the same distance. All right, grade 4, that's all I have for you today. Bye.